Hey guys! This chapter is particularly dear to my heart because I've been a huge fan of the opposite color bishop ending since my childhood. In our chess club where I grew up, we had an international master trainer who was fanatic about the opposite color bishop endings, and in almost every training session we have found time to discuss an interesting looking opposite color bishop endgame with him. We could analyze this position for hours and hours, so I would say that I've got a very complex and deep knowledge about them. I hope you are going to enjoy this video and find as much beauty in these endings as I do. Just like when we were dealing with the same color bishop endings, the theory here is also very diversified, but we will only focusing on endgames with a practical value. We are not going to touch the elementary examples with bishop and 1 or 2 pawns against bishop. They are also very important because you have to know the basics of this type of endgames, and I strongly recommend you to look them up in endgame books. But again, this is not the purpose of this video series. With the help of the next few examples, I would like to show you how tricky can some of the draw looking positions be. But before we start, I would like to share some general thoughts. First of all, endgame theory suggests that this type of ending is rather drawish, and even positions with 2 or 3 extra pawns might offer no chances to play for a win at all. The reason for this is one word you often hear about this endgame type, and the word is fortress. The main theme of the opposite color bishop endings is the fortress. In most cases, the weaker side tries to put all his pawn on the same color as his bishop and tries to use his king or bishop to block the enemy passed pawns. To avoid fortresses, the attacker side should follow the most important principle in opposite color bishop endings. He should always place his pawns on the opposite color to his own bishop. And on the contrary, the defender should place his pawns on his own bishop's color. Try to remember this rule because you can win or save a lot of games with this technique. So once more, as an attacker, you should place your pawns on the opposite color of your bishop. Another important principle as an attacker is to create passed pawns, sometimes even with a sacrifice. The number of pawns are often less important than the number of passed pawns. So try to create passed pawns on different wings and try to break through with your king to support them. With the help of the next few examples, I'm going to demonstrate you that not all opposite color bishop endings are draw, and how some of the best players in the world misplay those positions. But enough of the rules without moves, let's go ahead and start with the first position. This game was played in 2013 in Turkey at the World Team Championship between 2 strong grandmasters, Krivoruchko and Essen. The material is equal and we have the opposite color bishops on the board, so at first glance it looks like an easy draw. But white has some edge thanks to the d5 protected passed pawn and to his safer king. We are at move 37 and black is already facing a difficult decision. The natural move is queen e3 to force the trade of the queens, and this is exactly what happened in the game, but surprisingly it might be a decisive mistake. And I have to be honest, I was surprised too, because practice has shown that in an opposite color bishop ending, when there are heavy pieces on the board, the side who is more active has the advantage. And here it looks like that the black king on f8 is in more trouble than the king on g2. So to me what Essen did looks like very logical. But instead of queen e3, I think queen e1 would have been the right direction. So queen e1, but even here black will have difficulties to equalize and have to suffer for a long time. But apparently this was much better than trading the queens. Let's see what would happen after queen e1. White cannot play queen h5 right away because, believe it or not, he will lose his queen after queen f2 check, king h3 is an only move, queen f1, king g4, and after queen e2 black is winning the queen. So a better move is to play bishop g4 here, preparing for d6 and open up the position. And now black gives a check, king h3 and king g7. If now white gives one more tempo to black, he will play bishop e5, or even he has a trickier move because after king g7 he protected the f6 pawn, so now bishop g1 is a problem for white. So let's say if white will play bishop f5, then bishop g1, white could get into trouble. So the good move here for white is to play d6, try to open up the position, threatening with queen b7, and here black has to be very careful. Now bishop g1 is losing. White simply gives a check, and after king h6, queen g2 defends everything, and white white is winning here because black has to trade the queen and then the d6 pawn will promote. So bishop g1, obviously a bad idea. But here black can play bishop e5. And now white has to be very careful. If he pushes d7 now, then h5 is a good move. And black wins the d7 pawn. White has to take on a5, queen d7 with a check. This is completely draw. So white cannot play d7. The strong move here is bishop f5, preparing queen h5 plan, queen d6, queen h5, and after a couple of moves, king f8, check, king e8, queen h7. This is still a much better position for white, but I think that was the direction black should go. It's still hard to hold because white most likely will try to create a pass pawn on the h file and will push forever, but again, this was the only way to play for a draw. Alright, let's go back to the game. Black decided to trade the queens, and white cannot really avoid it, but he doesn't have to. White took, bishop takes e3, and now if we look at the position, it looks like an easy draw for black. 6-6 pawns, opposite color bishops, the black pawns are on the color of the black bishop, so everything looks okay. I would say the only problem black has to face with is the d-pass pawn, but there is one more thing, and it is very, very important. It is as important that it's going to cause serious headaches for black, and that problem is the Zugzwang. We have already seen several occasions how powerful a Zugzwang can be, and it is no different here. The main weapon against fortress in opposite color bishop endings is usually the Zugzwang. When you think the position is dead draw, always think about that element. Let's see how Krivoruchko continued the game. The next few moves goes without saying. First, white has to play d6, he cannot let the black king blockade the pawn, and also it opens the path for the king to c6. The only serious weakness is the b6 pawn. In such endings, you always have to look for the backward pawns that cannot be protected by the bishop. So black played bishop d4 to attack the d6 pawn. We have talked about this defending strategy. Black needs the dark squares for his king to build a fortress. King f3, bishop e5, now white has to push the pawn, d7, king e7, king e4, king d8, king d5, and king c7. Black achieved his dream. He built a blockade. It looks like there is no way to go through, but white has a very strong plan now. I would like to give a shot to you guys to find the right plan. Again, it is not a free 4-move plan, it is more like a strategical plan. Playing opposite color bishop endings often requires an unusual type of chess thinking, in which logic plays more role than the analysis of the variations. In some extreme cases, positions may be more like mathematical puzzles, so I think this is why computers often play the opposite color bishop endgames relatively weakly. So try to think big and try to create a series of plans to win the game. Spend at least 6 or 7 minutes on the position. You can go ahead and pause the video now. And we are back on air. The key concept to the winning is the Zugzwang, believe it or not. But white has to be very precise to get it. First, he has to block every counterplay on the king side with bishop g4. This is the good move. Bishop f5 would have let the advantage go, because now black can play h5 and he can trade the pawns on the king side. King e6, king d8, and after king f7, black can play h4. Take, take, white has to play h3, and now black simply plays bishop d4, and after king e6, he goes back to e5, and there is no way to break through here. The fortress is perfect here. Alright, let's go back. White played bishop g4, and I have found a crazy idea here as well, and I'm gonna show you this line a little bit because in case anybody thought about it. So g4 is possible as well, and I'm not 100% sure, but it might win as well. Amazing, this is ridiculous, guys. Black takes on h2, and now d8 queen. Black has to take, obviously, and king c6. So now white is 2 pawns down, black has 6 pawns, white only has 4 pawns, but the b6 pawn will fall, and then the a or the c pawn will fall, and then white starts to push his pawn on the queen side. White black has no chance to mobilize his pawns on the king side. So this might win as well. I checked some lines. If black plays actively king e7, Then white goes bishop f5, h6, king b6, king d6. Now black is trying to go with the king to the king side to help the pawns to promote. King a5, but he's too slow. King e5, king b6, and now white push a4, a5, and this is winning. Take, take, but white is much faster here. If black pushes f5, then white can play bishop h5, g4, a5, and nobody will catch that a pawn. So this is easily winning. Black has another defense to play bishop c7 instead of king e7. So in this position, instead of king e7, bishop c7. But after bishop f5, black is in Zugzwang. h6, king b7, and now the black bishop has to move. If he goes bishop e5, then white takes. Let's say bishop c3, king c5, king c7, and after a3 and b4, white will create two connected pass pawn, and I think this is winning for white. I didn't go further because the move that Krivoruchko played is much better, but I just wanted to show you guys how crazy an opposite color bishop ending can be. White just sacrificed 2 pawns for nothing, and most likely he still wins the game. But okay, let's go back to bishop g4 because this move is much better. Now white controls everything on the king side. Black played h6, king e6. Now king e7 is a serious threat. The only move is king d8. Bishop d6 is obviously losing because d8 queen. So king d8, and now a4. King f7 would have been a mistake. That is too slow. Bishop d4, king g6. White goes for the h pawn, but black is in time. After bishop g1, h4, take, take. Black can force the h pawn to go. Bishop f2, h5. And after bishop e3, there is no way to break through. Now white can take on f6, but with this setup, bishop g5 and king c7, he cannot do anything. This is again a fortress and a draw. So king f7 is a mistake. So white played a4. And now black has to deal with several problems. The first, that he is in a serious Zugzwang now. The bishop cannot move on the b8 h2 diagonal because white simply takes on f6, then walks to his king to h6, create an h pass pawn and wins the game. Also black cannot move the king. King c7 simply loses because king e7, and black cannot stop d8. So the only move is bishop d4 here. This is what happened in the game. But with this move, the path is clear for white. He can finally go to the b6 pawn. So white played king d6. Now black has to do something. He tried to find some counterplay, bishop g1. But after h4, everything will settle down on the king side, and black has to face his problems on the queen side. So black played g takes h4. Bishop h2 won't change anything. White has this beautiful plan, king c6, and when black takes the pawn, he simply pushes h5. Now the g4 bishop perfectly controls the 2 passed pawns on the king side, and now the black pawns are going to fall on the other side. So it is pretty much same as the game. Let's go back here. Black played g takes h4, take back, and he decided to trade the h pawn as well with this small trick, h5, take, and bishop f2. Doesn't matter. Bishop g6, bishop h4. Now white went back to f5. And now black played bishop e1. Bishop g3 check doesn't help. King c6, bishop c7, and after king b7, black is losing the pawns. So black went bishop e1 and trying to make another fortress after king c6, bishop d2, king b6, and bishop b4. And it seems like everything is still under control. However, if we take a slightly closer look, we quickly realize that if it was black's turn, he would have no useful moves. So therefore the task is very easy. White only needs to make a triangulation with his king. Krivoruchko played king b7. There is nothing better than to move the bishop. The black king cannot move because king c8. So bishop d2, king c6. Now the pawn is hanging. He had to go back, and king b6. And here we are, another beautiful Zugzwang position. The bishop cannot move because he's going to lose one of the pawns, and the king cannot move because king c7 and the d pawn will promote. Black played bishop d2, king c5, king c7. White still has to be precise, but this is a winning position with several different plans. King b5, bishop e1, c5, bishop d2, c6, bishop e1, and this is the critical position. And I think Krivoruchko did a very good job here. He won that game in a very nice style. He sacrificed the d-pawn, d8 check, king takes d8, king b6, now c7 is a serious threat, bishop f2 check first, king b7, bishop g3, and now of course b4. And black resigned here in the view of if he takes on b4, white simply plays a5, and now the black bishop cannot deal with both pawns, while the white bishop uses the one diagonal concept to defend against both the b4 and the f6 pawns, so black has to resign here. Alright, a very instructive game. It looks like not all the opposite color bishop endgames are draw. The weakness of the b6 backward pawn and the passivity of the black king mixed with the Zugzwang was enough for white to win the game. Alright, let's now move to the second game, which will be very similar to this one. We have two extremely talented and young Chinese players, Wang Yu and Ding Liren. Both players were part of the Tromsø Olympiad winning team in 2014. Wang Yu was the first board of the Chinese team, and on the second board Ding Liren made an incredible performance, scoring 7.5 out of 10. But this time they are facing each other, and the position on the board is very similar to the previous one. We have the opposite color bishops with extra queens, but it is white to move now. White is up a pawn, and his bishop is more active than the black bishop on g7, but the situation is far from easy, and right now black is threatening with a perpetual check, so white has to come up with a plan. I think he has two options. One is to take the pawn on b6 with a check, but then he has to calculate the complications after bishop f6. The second option is to give a check on d6 with the queen and force the queen trade, because after queen d6 bishop f6 is not working. But the emerging endgame without the queens looks completely drawish, so not an easy decision. As I mentioned before, sometimes the opposite color bishop endings are more like mathematical puzzles than chess games, and it looks like Wang Yu is very good in solving logical puzzles. He played queen d6 check, and I'm absolutely sure that he saw the winning plan from start to finish. However, option 1 gives white good winning chances as well, so let's check that line first. Queen b6 check, now bishop f6, queen takes c5, and there is no perpetual check now because after queen e1 check, the white bishop can go back to f1. But again, this position is far from easy. Black pushes e4, and now he is threatening with different kinds of tactics. If he could put his bishop on d4 or bishop h4 or something like this, white could be in trouble. But of course the engine holds. After queen f2, a strong defensive move, black has to go away, and now king h2. Probably white is winning here because whatever black does, he has some reply. Let's say if black would play bishop e5 with f3 check plan, then white can play queen b6 check, and if the black king moves, then queen g6 check, and now I'm going to win the bishop wherever the black king goes. King f8 is losing because queen f5 and king h8 runs into queen e8 check. So bishop e5 is not working. I tried to play king g5 first. Now bishop e5 is a threat, but if I remember well, queen e2 is a very strong move here. Now the e4 pawn is hanging, and if bishop e5, white can take on e4. There is no f3 check because the bishop is hanging on e5. So this line was winning to or giving very good winning chances for white, but I like what Wang Yu did. He played queen d6 check. Now the only move is queen f6, bishop f6 is losing because queen f8 check, bishop g7, and after queen f5, black cannot prevent the mate. If he gives a check, then now bishop f1, queen e3, and after king h1, queen g6 will mate. So black had to play queen f6, white took, and bishop takes f6. At first glance, the game looks like a simple draw, because the connected pawns on the king's side are fixed and perfectly blockaded by the king, while the black bishop could successfully protect the queen side. But in fact, black's situation is much more difficult. The most annoying problem he has to solve is the weakness of the pawn on b6. The white king is going to start his journey to c6, and when it arrives, black must be ready to protect it with the bishop. But he won't be able to do it from d8, because then white will chase the bishop away with king d7, and after it moves, king c7 will win the pawn. So in order to protect the b6 pawn, black has to transfer his bishop to a5, but then he will face with other problems. Let's see how the game continued. King f2, bishop h4. So this is what I was talking about. If king g5, then king f3, white simply walks to c6, bishop e7, first bishop e2 protects the g4 pawn, of course, king e4, bishop f3. Now everything is protected, white is ready to walk, bishop g7, king c6, bishop d8, and now simply king d7. Typical maneuver, black has to move, and after king c7, the position is completely winning, the b6 pawn will fall. So black cannot only sit and wait with the king moves, he has to transfer the bishop to a5, so bishop h4 check, king f3, king g5, bishop e2 again, preparing king e4 and protect the g4 pawn, bishop e1, king e4, everything is very logical, bishop c3, bishop f3, and now black has to divide his attention between three different problems. One is of course the king d5, king c6 plan. The second is the weakness of the e5 pawn, but I think black can deal with those two threats. The biggest problem is the third one, and that is slightly more hidden than the others. But I can demonstrate it to you very quickly. So if black only waits with bishop d4 and bishop c3, then after bishop e4, he's going to find himself in Zugzwang. Let's see. So bishop d4, king d5, bishop c3, black prepares for king c6, he also protects the e5 pawn, but now after bishop e4, suddenly black is again in Zugzwang. He cannot move the bishop to a5 because the e5 pawn is hanging. He cannot move the bishop on the a1 aj diagonal because then king c6 wins the b pawn, so he has to move with the king. But that has consequences. After king e6, black has to go back, and now h6 is simply winning. Black has to take, and king f6, and now black cannot prevent the g pawn to promote. So bishop d4, bishop c3 is not working for black. He had to give up the e5 pawn and played bishop b4. White took on e5. Yes, here he could try also king d5, but he cannot reach the same position because black will sacrifice his pawn with e4 intentionally. So this is going to transpose to the game after bishop c3. So white decided to take the pawn immediately, bishop c3 check, and the game is not over yet. Ding defends tenaciously, but unfortunately for him the position is lost. But I'm gonna stop here because the winning plan is so brilliant that I want you to find it. So I'm giving you some time to figure it out. What would you do with white? You can pause the video now. And we are back. I hope you have found the winning plan. It is not as complicated, but I think it is really nice. So what white has to do is to walk to c6 with his king first, king d5, bishop d2, king c6, and bishop a5. And it looks like the game is drawn, because black just starts to wait with king h5, king g6, or if the white king approaches the king side, it frees the black bishop to move. However, here comes the brilliant idea, which I believe was foreseen by Wang Yu before even trading the queens. And it is bishop d1 or bishop d5, same idea. So bishop d1, king h6, and now comes the point. b4. Amazing idea. I explain you why. Black cannot take with the bishop, obviously, because king b6, and now the a5 pawn will promote. So the only move is to take with the c pawn. And now comes the killer move, bishop b3. And now the a5 bishop is completely dead. He cannot move out from a5. So black can only move the king, king g5 and king h6. But now after king d5, white will simply walk to the other side, king g5, king e5. And now black is in a complete Zugzwang. If he moves the king, then king f6 is winning. He has to play something like b5, a takes b5. But now white is simply going back to c6 with the king and will promote the b pawn. So Ding resigned after king d5 here. What a fantastic game by Wang Yu. The whole winning plan was so logical, but at the same time brilliant. I told you, opposite color bishop endgames are not boring at all. Indeed, they can be very entertaining. The next example is a nice one as well, and it is on my top 10 list of my favorite opposite color bishop endings. Talking about the top 10 list, I have to mention two amazing endgames in this topic. The first one is the most well-known opposite color bishop endgame, the game of Kotov against Botvinnik in Moscow 1955. It is a classical example of why passed pawns are more important than material. And the second game is one of my personal favorite, the game between Topalov and Shirov from the Linares tournament in 1998. It is not a typical opposite color bishop ending, but go ahead and check it out, you will understand why I like it so much. But let's get back to our example, a game between Karyakin and Svidler from the 2015 World Cup final in Baku. I believe most of you remember that thriller when Svidler was leading 2-0 in the final and he only needed a draw to become the winner of the World Cup, but Karyakin won the last two classical games and later on won the tiebreak too. This game was the first rapid game after the 4 classical games, and I remember I couldn't believe my eyes that Svidler went on losing this one as well. White is a pawn up, but the position looks completely drawish. Black has successfully built an unbreakable fortress here. But has he? Karyakin has found a marvelous plan to break the fortress. Before I'm giving you more hints, I want to ask you first, what would you do here? What would be your plan? This is again a very interesting moment where you can challenge yourself. And remember what I said in the intro, the main weapon against the fortress is usually the Zugzwang. When you think the position is dead draw, always think about that. The board is yours, give yourself enough time to find the right moves. You can go ahead and pause the video now. And here we are. I hope you had a great time finding the solution, which is not easy at all. The only way to play for a win is to somehow walk the other side with the king and try to take the g6 pawn. Of course, right now it's impossible because the black bishop prevents that with the help of the black king, and if white comes back with the king through a7, a6, a5, then black has time to reorganize his pieces and build another fortress. Let me show you how. So if white goes king a7, then black simply waits, king a6, black waits, king a5, king b4, and after bishop c4, king a3, now it's the right time for black to go to e6 with the king. And after a couple of moves, here white has to understand that he has no winning plans. After king g5, black is only going to move the bishop, and there is no way to win. So that's not a good plan for white. Let's go back here. Another try is to sacrifice the pawn with d5, but right now it is too early. Black simply takes it, and after king c7, again the black king can reach the e6 square, which will be very important in this game, you will see later on. And this is again a draw. King d8, bishop c6, there is no way to break through. So white has to be very smart and first lose a tempo to force the black bishop to e6, and only then play for the pawn sacrifice to open the path for the king to the other side. I hope you also thought about this idea. So Karyakin played bishop g5. It looks like a strange move without any meaning, but it has a very deep plan. It looks like now bishop e6 is an only move. Black cannot move his king because king b6, then d5 is winning. If king d5, then king c7 is the problem. So the only move in the position is bishop e6. And Svidler also thought there is nothing better than bishop e6, but I think this moment was critical. We will get back to this after the game, but I want to first show you what happened in the game. So Svidler played bishop e6, bishop h6. Again, d5 is too early because now the king takes, and now I have no time to play king c7 because the pawn is hanging on e5. I have to go back to f4 with the bishop, but then black has time to put his king on e6 after bishop d7. So d5 again is too early. Karyakin played bishop h6, and now Svidler continued with his plan. He played bishop d7, he thought he couldn't get into any trouble, bishop f4, and bishop e6. And the time has come. d5. Brilliant move. Now white gives up his material advantage, but he gets success with his king to the kingside pawns. And this is the only way to win this game. The difference with the bishop on e6 is after king takes d5, now king c7, and black cannot go back with the king to e6. He cannot block the way with king e6, and white can reach his goal. Svidler took with the bishop, but first let's see this line. Here if black could rearrange his pieces, He could have saved the game, but there is no way to get the king to e6. The black bishop is such a useless piece, it cannot go to anywhere. So black has nothing better than king c4, now king d6, and here both lines are winning. If black goes bishop f7, then e6, bishop e8, bishop e5, of course we have to protect the c3 pawn first, king d3, king e7, and now after some moves, black has to resign, take, e8, take, and now white is going to simply defend against the b pawn and take the whole king side with the king. So bishop f7 is losing very simply. Bishop g8 is another try. Now e6 doesn't come with a tempo, but still it wins. King c3, king e5. Now white transfer his king to f6 and e7 will win. b4, king f6. It's time for black to take because e7 is promoting. Take, b3, king f6. And now if b2, then bishop e5 wins. White takes the pawn and then king g6 is winning. So this is the reason why Svidler took with the bishop here. So instead of king d5, he played bishop d5. But now white is free to go. The c8 squared is not covered anymore. So king c8, and the arrows shows you exactly what's going to happen. And black cannot put his king to e6. This is very important. Bishop b3, king d8, and after king d5, white can play king e7. No king e6. King c4, this is an aggressive way for black to play, but after some moves, king g6, b4, white takes the other pawn on h5, bishop c4, and now white only has to prevent the b pawn to promote, king g6, b3, and after bishop c1, white is going to sacrifice the bishop for the b pawn, and the h and e pawn will win the game very easily. So king d5 was a bad option for black. He played bishop c4, but it doesn't help. King e7, bishop b3, and here there are several winning plans. King f6 was one of them. King f6, king d7, and again white takes the 2 pawns. This is also winning, but Karyakin played e6, which is also a very simple win. Bishop c4, king f6, and after bishop b3, white needs a little patience. First he has to improve his bishop. Bishop g5 or bishop c1, both moves are very strong. Bishop c4, bishop a3, bishop b3, black basically cannot do anything. And after e7, king d7, king g6, and Svidler resigned here because obviously the h5 pawn will fall, then king g5, and then white will push the h pawn, and there is no way for black to defend against it. So another amazing game with a very deep and nice idea. But before we move on, let's go back to the beginning of the game. I would like to show you something. So here, after white plays bishop g5, black had a beautiful and unexpected resource. The only way to save the game was f4. Amazing move, sacrificing another pawn to free the f5 square for the bishop. And now there is no way to break through. It doesn't matter how white takes back. Of course, g takes f4 is logical, but now the d5 sacrifice is not going to be as strong as in the game. Now black simply plays bishop f5, and whenever white plays d5, he can take king c7 and king e6. And now we have the draw position again. And I think there are no other plans here. Black is ready to play bishop d7 and bishop f5 for the rest of the game. White can again come back with the king on the a file, but it doesn't help at all. I couldn't find any winning plan here with white. But Svidler missed this amazing resource, and we saw the rest of the game. Alright, I have only one more game for you guys. This game is the exact opposite of the previous 3 examples. Now the attacking side has to keep the queens on the board at all costs. If black can force a queen trade, then white has zero chance to win the opposite color bishop ending. White is Ryazantsev, a super strong grandmaster from Russia who won the Russian Championship Super Final in 2016, and black is Macieja, one of the top Polish players and European individual champion from 2002. This game also happened to be at the European Championship in Plovdiv 2012, and I was lucky enough to follow this game live. It was round 10 and a must-win situation for Ryazantsev to qualify for the World Cup, which he did with this and the last round win. I've already finished my game and I was walking between the rows in the tournament hall, and this game grabbed my attention. When I looked at the position, I thought that it's gonna be a long struggle for Black, but I predicted to be a draw after all. I went back to my hotel room, and after I saw the result online, I had to check the game, and as I went through the ending, I realized that this is a very difficult position for Black. Even more difficult than I expected it. So I was trying to find similar endgames in the database, and I analyzed about 15-16 similar endings, even with rooks on the board instead of the queens, and I have to tell you that such ending gives the attacking side very decent winning chances. But it is all about the technique. The rules you have to follow is to be active, always put your opponent under pressure, and try not to give him any counter chances. And this is exactly what Ryazantsev did. So in order to win this game, White has to avoid the queen trade, and at some point he has to start pushing the pawns on the king side. It is the only way to win. So first White tries to squeeze Black's kings into the corner by centralizing the pieces. Ryazantsev played queen e7. Black basically has no plans here. He has to defend tenaciously. So Maciej played bishop c4, which prepares queen f7. White played queen e4 check, king h8, queen f4, now queen h6 is the threat, king goes back, check, king h8, queen g6, again queen h6 is threatening, and queen g3. What White is doing now is simply wait for a mistake. He's not rushing anything, he just wants Black to play a bad move, and here he could have played a bad move. Of course, Maciej didn't do it. He played queen g8, but let's check some lines, what would happen after bishop e2. White plays f4, bishop c4, and after f5, Black is already losing. He cannot protect f6, so Black cannot play bishop e2. Also, bishop d3 is a mistake. Actually, it's a blunder, because bishop g7, and after queen g7, White takes the bishop, and that's a winning queen ending. So here Black went back to g8, and now queen e5. I think this is the perfect place for the White queen in this game. Now the Black queen cannot really go away. It is tied down to the g7 pawn, and it has to stay on f7, g8 or f8 somewhere. And now White can finally start pushing the pawns. So queen f7, f4, and now king h7. Bishop d3 was another option, but after g4, White will eventually play f5, and I think that's transposing to the game. So Black played simply king h7 and f5. I hope you still remember that rule that I was talking about in the beginning of the video. Let me repeat it now. As an attacker, you should place your pawns on the opposite color of your bishop. So the reason White played f5 is not to push it to f6, no way. The idea is to fix the g7 pawn on the dark square and tie the Black queen to it. The c4 bishop is useless now. It doesn't help in defense, it has no target in attack, so basically it's a useless piece. So this is why Black wanted to improve it, and he played bishop d5 here. Of course, the other option was to play queen f6, but the opposite color bishop endgame with 2 pawns down is losing. Take, bishop f6. Now White has time to protect the f pawn. King f2, take, and this position is losing with the c and the b pawn on the board. It's very important. g5, and here, of course, White is simply winning, pushes f7, and then the game is over. So queen f6 was a bad idea. He played bishop d5, king h2, queen d7. Black cannot really do anything, he's just waiting, and g4. And now Black cannot wait any longer, he has to find some counterplay. So Maciej played bishop a8, I think it is a very good move. But let me show you what would happen if he just simply waits on c4. So after bishop c4, Black loses very quickly. White only has to play some prophylactical move first, and then he can launch the pawn storm on the king side. So here h4, queen f7, bishop d3, king f4, and now Black has no defense against g5, g6. If queen f8, then first queen c7. Yes, queen f8 is a tricky move because g5 is a mistake now because black can play g6. And if white pushes f6, then after queen f7, black can hold the draw. So white has to be careful here. So instead of g5, first he has to play queen c7, bishop c2, queen d7, and now g5 is the next move and black can resign. So black had to find some counterplay, and this is why Maciej went back to a8 with the bishop. Now the idea is to play queen b7 obviously and trying to give a mate to white. Of course it's not gonna happen, but at least black is doing something. King g3, queen b7, queen e6. White puts some pressure on black again. Now queen g6, sometimes a threat with the f6 plan. Black has to do something. He played queen c7 check. Queen g2 was already losing. King h4, and now white will mate after queen g6. So black had to give a check on c7, bishop e5, and now black went to c6 with the queen, which is very logical, but in fact that's the decisive mistake in the game. The only move that wouldn't lose immediately was queen a7, inexplicable move found by the computer. And here I really don't want to go into so much details. I'm just gonna show you some nice lines for fun. So queen a7, strange move by the computer, king h4, queen f2 check first, and after king h5, black goes back to a7. And it's ridiculous, but whatever white does, black has some resource. I analyzed some lines, let's say bishop f4, queen c5, and now it looks like bishop h6 is winning, right? Because if black takes back, I'm going to take the pawn and then I'm going to check the bishop, completely winning. But all of a sudden black has this move, queen c3, now he's threatening with queen h3, and after bishop e3, bishop c6, there is no mate, so black survived. So bishop f4 is not the best way to squeeze. White has queen g6 as well, king g8, and now several moves. If f6, that leads to an opposite color bishop endgame, bishop d5, amazing move again. And unfortunately this ending is not winning for white. Take, take, king h7, and black can hold this. Or if white goes h4, then bishop f7 mate. Nice. So f6 doesn't work. What about bishop g7? Tactical idea, but it doesn't work because black takes, queen h6, and after queen c3 there is no mate, check. And if white takes the bishop, then he runs into a mate again. So white has to be careful here. He could even lose this game. Of course he doesn't have to take the bishop and that's a draw. Or another move is to give a check on e8 first, king h7, and now let's say bishop d4. But here black has this plan again, queen c7, queen b5, of course losing. That's a blunder because queen e7 and black is mating here. So white has to give a check on g6, king g8, and f6. But again here black can liquidate to an opposite color bishop endings without the queens, bishop d5, king h4, queen f7, and this endgame is draw again. Black holds this. So believe it or not, black could still save the game with this amazing move, queen a7 here, but in the game Maciej played the more logical queen c6, and unfortunately for him it's already a losing move. White played queen f7, queen b7, check, king g8, check, king h7, and king h4. And now white uses this strategy, this checking strategy, to win a tempo, and now black hasn't got queen a7 anymore because now bishop d4, queen b7, and f6 wins. And if black takes, take, and black cannot hold this anymore. So he played queen c6 again, but then same strategy, queen f7, it's a mate threat, black has to go back, then white gives a check on g6, black goes back to g8, then white gives a check on e8, king a7, and now I have a free tempo again. And here f6 was already winning, but Ryazantsev played bishop d4, maybe waiting for another mistake or blunder, but of course Maciej didn't do that. He played queen c6, so they repeated this position again, check, here queen f8, and here for Maciej it was already enough. probably f6 is coming next and is winning for white. So he tried to create something. He played b4, hoping for queen takes b4, but of course white took with the pawn, and after queen d7, white took on g7 with the queen, sacrificed the piece, but of course he calculated this endgame until the end, b5, and white has 4 against 1 pawn, and the bishop cannot do anything here. King h5, b6, bishop d5, g5, take, take, and white has 3 unstoppable pawns here. So in a few moves, black resigned. H5, bishop h1, h6, bishop g2, and f6. And finally black resigned here. Impressive endgame technique by Ryazantsev. He gave no realistic chance to black. I like this game a lot. It was a long game, but sometimes converting the advantage from such a position takes a lot of time and needs patience. Alright guys, this was our last opposite color bishop endgame. I hope you have learned the basic concepts and got some ideas how to play for a win in a draw-looking position. Let's quickly summarize the important ideas. Of course, there are a lot of different rules you have to follow playing opposite color bishop endings, but I would like to highlight 3 useful strategies. As a defender, you should place your pawns on your own bishop's color, and you always have to look for the fortresses. If you can build one, you are safe. As an attacker, you should place your pawns on the opposite color of your bishop. To break the fortress, always think about the concept of the Zugzwang. Another important principle as an attacker is to create pass pawns, sometimes even with a sacrifice. The material is often less important than the number of the pass pawns. Try to use these strategies in your games and you will see the results. Okay guys, this was the last video in the first part of my practical endgame course. I hope you have enjoyed all the 7 lectures. We have covered the 2 most common pawn structures, the isolated and the hanging pawn structures. Then in the last 5 chapters, we were looking at practical endgames where one piece, the bishop or the knight, played a key role. We saw the power of the bishop pair, the different strategies in the same and opposite color bishop endings, and the battle between the knight and the bishop. I'm currently working on the second part, where I would like to show you the secrets of how to play rook and queen endings, and in the last couple of lectures, we will deal with different endgame strategies like plan making, precise play, squeeze, and the art of defense. So I hope to see you soon guys, have fun with the lectures, see you later.